Hello, and welcome to Sonata She Wrote. Today we are discussing the penultimate song in Die Schöne Müllerin, Der Müller und Der Bach, or The Miller and the Brook. We find the Miller singing on the shore of his brook, exhausted by grief, the accompanimental chords calling to mind the Miller's lute and its accompaniment in Mit dem grünen Lautenband, a song where he also lamented that he was out of songs to sing. Immediately, Schubert's use of the tonic pedal tells us the overarching mood of the Miller will be static. He is trapped within his own grief, the expressively crunchy pinnacle of which is the F sharp on Liebe, heard initially directly against the tonic in the bass voice of the piano. This is followed by a Neapolitan chord on Lilien, lilies, emphasizing the funereal nature of that flower. Following the Miller's dejected song, the Brook sings to the Miller. Although the Brook's voice has been hinted at, and several times its rippling waters have appeared as accompaniment in the form of arpeggiated 16th note chords, in this song, the Brook actually literally speaks to the Miller, ostensibly to comfort him.
Ein Sternlein, ein neues am Himmel erblinkt. Da springen drei Rosen, halb rot und halb weiß, die welken nicht wieder aus Dornenreis, und die Engelein schneiden die Flügel sich ab und gehen alle Morgen zur Erde herab, und gehen alle Morgen zur Erde herab.
Youens writes that the Brook is attempting to dissuade the Miller from whatever he might be planning, that, quote, there are no hidden currents, no concealed disturbances in the placid flow of the right-hand part. Everything about the Brook's song tells of clarity, symmetry, and stability, end quote. But I'm going to go out on a limb here and disagree with Youens. I think for the first time, I do not view the Brook as a positive or even neutral actor in this story, but rather as the entity which has set everything in motion, agitating the young Miller's hopes and pushing him towards this hopeless state. I feel the Brook's music is in major not to reassure the Miller, but to enchant him. The Brook sings of when love breaks free from sorrow. But how does it break free? Note the harmonies when the Brook first starts, emphasizing anything but the tonic. The first G major chord is actually a secondary dominant. We finally make our way to the tonic, where the Brook easily ascends to a high G, when the Miller could only rise to an F sharp. Also, notice this rhythm here, under A New Star Will Shine. This rhythmic accompaniment has two effects. First, it tends to weaken motion from the tonic to the dominant. Although the tonic note is on the first beat, its strength is undermined by the dissonant fifth moving beneath it. This reoccurs in the next section focused around D major and its secondary dominant. The dominant harmony feels more stable because it has a pedal point, whereas the tonic feels like a brief interruption of that pedal. This gently rocking accompaniment is also foreshadowing the next song, the Brook's Lullaby.
Ach, Bächlein, liebes Bächlein, du meinst es so gut. Ach, Bächlein, aber weißt du, wie Liebe tut? Ach, unten, da unten, der kühle Ruh. Ach, Bächlein, liebes Bächlein, so singe nur zu. Ach, Bächlein, liebes Bächlein, so singe nur zu.
The Miller immediately returns us to G minor. He refutes the Brook asking if it knows how love can hurt you. He refutes the Brook's music, asking if it knows how love can hurt. His melody finally transforms into major when he asks the Brook to keep singing, as he seeks the cool rest below it. This is the end of the Miller. And finally you can see why I chose this artwork, which is meant to represent the Miller sleeping peacefully at the bottom of the Brook. The work is meant to be an album cover of an edition of Wunderlich singing the cycle, and I assume the artist was given a prompt involving flowers and not told specifically that either lilies or blue flowers would be more appropriate, but the artwork is still very expressive to my eye. The entire cycle of Die Schöne Müllerin is really a cautionary tale, and it's important to recognize that it was genuinely meant this way by both Schubert and Müller. Müller's cycle of poems actually includes a few which Schubert did not set to music, including a nightmare where the Müller imagines himself in hell, that Schubert probably thought ruined the vibe. But the final poem of the cycle is also left out, Der Dichter als Epilog, the poet as epilogue, actually the 25th poem. It reads as a warning to both appreciate actual concrete love and not to chase after a romanticized, unrequited love to your own detriment. The modern-day warning, at least my own interpretation of it, involves men, the patriarchy, and the hunt for status within that hierarchy. Remember the Miller in Am Feierabend, energetically going about his work and lamenting that he wasn't a paragon of masculinity, as the hunter later turned out to be. The Miller's love for the Mullerin is not real. How could it be? He didn't know this woman at all, and they exchanged 3 words in the entire cycle, but was actually an infatuation. Infatuation that had its roots in the Miller's own desire for status. The status of having a Frauenbild, a woman object of his own, to either prove or enhance his own masculinity, something Schubert was probably intimately familiar with. Youens also points out that the song cycle's failure to catch on may have been due to perceptions of the Miller as an effeminate character in a period when the ruggedly masculine individual was the norm for a protagonist. The first complete performance of the cycle didn't happen until the 1850s, over 30 years after Schubert had composed it. But we'll discuss that more next time, because there's still one more song to dive into, Des Baches Wiegenlied, or The Brook's Lullaby. As always, thank you for joining me. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and if you are able to support the channel, consider joining my Patreon.